Hello IntelliScientist. Welcome to the Alan IntelliBrain. We are here to perform the Intelli activity to identify the angles made by a transversal line. To perform the activity, we are going to need the following material from our Intelli Smart Box. Take out the parallel lines base sheet, 3 line scales referred as the measuring tool B, 2 angle discs referred as the measuring tool C, and the fastener kit from the lines and angles kit of your Intelli Smart Box. There are 4 lines marked on the parallel lines base sheet. Line L is parallel to line N and line M is parallel to line O. Place one line scale over the line L such that the line L is visible from the slit of the line scale referred as the measuring tool B. Now we will place the second measuring tool over the line N. After identifying a pair of parallel lines, we will now identify the angles made by a transversal line which crosses the 2 parallel lines. To do that, we will place the third line scale referred as the measuring tool B over the 2 line scales representing the parallel lines L and N. After identifying a pair of parallel lines, we will now identify the angles made by a transversal line which crosses the 2 parallel lines. We will need 2 bolts, 2 nuts and 4 washers from the fastener kit and the 2 angle discs referred as the measuring tool C from the lines and angles kit of your Intelli Smart Box. Insert 1 washer each into the 2 bolts. Insert 1 bolt into the slit of the upper measuring tool from below, near the right side of the point B1. Insert second bolt into the slit of the lower measuring tool B from the left side near to the point B3. Now insert the 2 bolts into the slit of the third measuring tool B, which represents the transversal line crossing the 2 parallel lines. After that, insert the bolt into the hole of the angle disc referred as the measuring tool C and align the angle disc such that the 0 degree and 180 degree mark is aligned with the slit of the upper measuring tool B, and similarly insert the bolt into the hole of the second angle disc such that the 0 degree and 180 degree mark on the measuring tool C is aligned with the slit of the lower measuring tool B, and finally insert the washer followed by the nut on both the upper and the lower end. The upper measuring tool B represents the line L. The lower measuring tool B represents the line N, which is parallel to the line L. And the third measuring tool B, which lies over the line L and the line L, represents the transversal line which crosses the 2 parallel lines. We can see there are 4 angles formed between the line L and the transversal line, and there are 4 angles formed between the line N and the transversal line. Let us name the upper four angles as angle 1, angle 2, angle 3, angle 4, and the lower four angles as angle 5, angle 6, angle 7, and angle 8. To find the measure of an angle, we find the difference between the marks on the measuring tool C, which is above the slits of the two arms of the angle to be measured. Let us measure the angle 1. These are the two arms of the angle 1. The upper mark on the measuring tool C is 70 degrees and the lower mark on the measuring tool C is 0 degrees. The difference between the two marks is equal to 70 minus 0, which is equal to 70 degrees. Now let us find the measure of angle 2. The upper mark on the measuring tool C is 70 degrees and the lower mark on the measuring tool C is 180 degrees. The difference between the two marks is 180 minus 70, which is equal to 110 degrees. We can observe that the sum of the measures of the angle 1 and the angle 2 is 110 plus 70, which is equal to 180 degrees. When the sum of the measures of the two angles is equal to 180 degrees, the two angles form a linear pair. Angle 1 and angle 2 form a linear pair as the measures of the two angles add up to 180 degrees, making a straight angle. Now let us measure the angle 5. We can see that the measure of angle 5 is equal to 70 minus 0. That means 70 degrees. The measure of angle 5 is equal to the measure of angle 1. Angle 1 and angle 5 are called the corresponding angles. The angles which lie on the same side of the transversal are called corresponding angles. And similarly, the measure of angle 2 and angle 6 is equal to 180 minus 70, that is 110 degrees. The measure of angle 2 and angle 6 is equal to one another, and the two angles are corresponding angles. The measure of the corresponding angles made by a transversal line crossing the two parallel lines are equal. Now let us check the measures of the angle 3 and the angle 5. The measure of angle 3 will be equal to 180 degrees minus 250 degrees, that is 70 degrees. And the measure of angle 5 is already known, which is equal to 70 degrees. We can clearly see that the measures of angle 3 and angle 5 are equal to one another. Angle 3 and angle 5 are called the alternate angles, which lie on the opposite sides of the transversal. The measures of the alternate angles made by a transversal line crossing the two parallel lines are equal. And similarly, angle 4 and angle 6 also make a pair of alternate angles and will be equal in measures. And like this, you can identify and measure all the other angles made by the transversal line crossing the two parallel lines. We know after doing this activity, you will have gained the expertise in the following concepts: understanding of the parallel lines and transversal line, identification and measurement of the angles made by a transversal line, understanding and identification of corresponding and alternate angles formed by a transversal line crossing the two parallel lines, understanding and identification of the linear pair. Now you can use the activity to identify the angles made by a transversal line and do it yourself. Visualize maths with IntelliBrain and fall in love with learning.